topic was generalized anxiety disorder, and it's a mental health condition in which a person's constantly worried or anxious about many things and finds it hard to control their anxiety. I guess probably not.
Yeah.
Symptoms include fatigue, irritability, difficulty concentrating, trouble sleeping, and nausea. The causes, it hasn't quite been determined, but scientists theorize that it could involve neurotransmitters such as serotonin, dopamine, and norepinephrine, and it could also involve life experiences, genetics, and stress.
Okay, so the statistics of generalized, I call it GAD. It affects 6.8 million adults or 3.1 of the U.S. population, and women are twice as likely to get this disorder than men are. And the treatments for it is basically common sense, like what everyone else knows. Like, you have to look at your worries in a new way. You have to practice relaxation techniques, and what that does, it helps you release your muscle tension. You have to learn how to calm down quickly, which a lot of us like can't do, because I know I can't. So like, in order to calm down, it says like you should take a walk through the park, listen to soothing music, said pet your dog, your cat or dog. I don't know how that helps me. Yeah, that helps. And you should change your lifestyle, like eat healthier, exercise, get your mind off of things, and find a really good support group to help you out and someone to talk to, like counseling basically.
And also, if things are like really difficult, a doctor will prescribe medication for it.
So here's my friend. He worries about things. Of course, everybody worries. It's natural. But this guy has got generalized anxiety disorder, GAD, and he pretty much worries all the time. You see, people with GAD have trouble turning their worrying and anxiety off. There's a sense of impending doom and terrible things will happen, even when there is little evidence that anything will actually turn out bad. This constant and uncontrollable worry gets in the way of having a more normal day-to-day life, and many experience physical symptoms like fatigue, muscle tension, insomnia, and mental tensions like concentration loss, nervousness, stress, and all of this can contribute to an inability to go places or experience and enjoy things, and to simply be happy. And this in turn will stop. There is help out there. There are methods to approaching and gaining control over your negative thoughts. You can look into support groups, cognitive behavioral therapy, and possibly even medication. Talk to your health professional for more information. Most of all, know that you are not the only one that has this. It is more common than you think, and that things can be done to help you cope.
So that's it.
All right, next we are going to go with phobias. We can do that next. And with some of these, I said it before, but with some of these anxiety disorders, to see the similarities, try to know some of the similarities, but be able to differentiate between some of these. Talk about how generalized is going to be different than phobias. And with generalized, it's not one specific thing that's causing their anxiety. It's going to be many things. Or everything.
You
That's
wouldn't
fine.
like load more posts because ours was in the beginning and like
Okay.
logging up.
Yeah, that's fine. No
So I
problem.
just, like, sign in.
Yeah, your email.
There's a lot of them.
You want to start now?
Yep.
Okay, so we did phobias, and phobia is like an anxiety disorder marked by persistent, irrational fear and avoidance of a subject, activity, or situation. Anything can cause a phobia from like different things, like some people have a phobia of clowns, fear of heights, claustrophobia, and arachnophobia, stuff like that. And the overall symptoms for these would be like breathlessness, dizziness, nausea, fear of dying, and a sense of unreality.
All right, there are several causes of phobias, and there's 4 types. There's environmental phobias, which would be like fear of lightning, thunderstorms, deep ocean, stuff like that. There's also animal phobias. Now you might be afraid of like rats, spiders, snakes, stuff like that. There's also medical phobias, which would be fear of going to the hospital, fear of blood, fear of doctors, stuff like that. And then lastly, there's situational, which is just you're scared of elevators, bridges, flying planes, anything like that. And also, on to some statistics. 6.3 million U.S. citizens have been diagnosed with phobias. And it's important to note that not everybody has been diagnosed. There are more people than 6.3 million are actually going to have phobias, but not everybody who's scared of snakes is going to get diagnosed with phobia. Also, women are more prone to phobias than men. It's important to note that also only about 10% of reported cases are lifelong. So you might have a phobia of snakes for a little bit and you might grow out of it or something. And also, there was a survey done with 100 people, and it determined that 65 of the 100 people reported that they had a phobia of snakes. 61 they had a phobia of public speaking, and then 45 that they had a phobia of heights. And those are the top 3 in the survey. There are some more, but those are the top 3.
Okay, phobias are classified into 3 categories. Social phobias, fear of like public speaking, talking in front of people. Agoraphobias, fear of being in an inescapable place like an elevator or a box. And then the last one is specific object phobia, scared of like snakes, water, certain things. And this video, it talks about a girl, I think, or kids that have social anxiety. And then they use exposure therapy to
Shyness is hardly uncommon. Just about every kid experiences a paralyzing moment during show and tell, or meeting someone new. But imagine a child so stricken with fear, she goes without speaking for an entire school year. You're about to meet 2 such children, their parents desperate for help, and one man who says he can cure them with a technique that just might work for anyone with a severe phobia. Here's ABC's Juju Chang.
Jake Semmel has trapped himself inside a world of silence.
So what's your favorite TV show?
He speaks to 7 adults in his life.
That's it. Just 7 adults. With everyone else, he won't talk. His parents were baffled.
He hurt himself at camp this summer and he didn't tell anybody. I said, "Did you cry?" He's like, "No." I said, "Did you tell the counselors?" He's like, "No."
Maya Walker is the same way. Watch, she doesn't move a muscle during her school's pageant. Maya's extreme social phobia made it impossible for her to blow out her own birthday candles. Happy birthday, Maya!
Not talking to your peers, not talking to your teachers, just being, even for recess, being next to the teacher like this.
She never played in recess?
No.
Her mom and stepdad say Maya didn't speak a word for the entire school year. They made this video just so the kids in her class could hear her voice.
Wave goodbye to your class.
I had Merry Christmas.
Maya is an extreme example, but nearly all kids have fears of one kind or another. Doctors think that's because parents rescue their kids too soon from what they're afraid of, which only makes the fears grow. Dr. Stephen Kurtz of the Child Mind Institute believes he has an answer. Jake and Maya suffer from selective mutism. He says not only can he cure it, he can do it in just 1 week. His therapy is called Brave Buddies, which exposes them to the very thing they're afraid of, speaking in public.
What's the key to the week here? repeated exposure to the same situations that they've been avoiding, like the plague, but providing kind of training wheels until they can do it confidently on their own.
The grown-ups are taught to stop overprotecting them and simply wait 5 seconds before jumping in.
Maya, what job would you like today?
So on day 1, rule number 1, Maya is allowed to feel the painfully long silence, long enough for her to answer.
I'm not sure, but tell me you're not sure.
Questions are designed to force verbal answers. They're offered a choice instead of nodding.
Jake, what job would you like? Caboose or crowd stopper? Or something else? Caboose! Ooh, great choice.
Jake's every mumble is praised.
Okay, so that's basically, that's the exposure therapy. They expose the kids to the similar situations, and they end up getting over it. And that's it.
Any questions for the group? And remember, so the next group will be panic disorders. If we could do that one next. But I'll try to expand, elaborate tomorrow after some of the other groups present. So we'll do panic. Next will be PTSD. Then we'll finish up the anxiety disorders with OCD. And then I'm hoping we could also squeeze schizophrenia in today as well. Allie, which one? Your OCD? Okay. Wow, what are you guys again?
Okay, so we did panic disorder, and we started off with some statistics, like some more at the bottom, but between 2.4 million and 6 million American adults have been diagnosed with a panic disorder, and women are twice as likely to get a panic disorder than men. And if you have a relative, a biological relative, you are 8 times more likely to develop a panic disorder.
Panic disorder is a type of anxiety disorder in which you can have repeated attacks of intense fear that something will happen. Some symptoms are sudden attacks of fear, intense worry, that which can also lead to depression. The choking sensation, so like if you feel like your neck tensing up and you can't speak. You avoid where attacks have happened, so if you're in a grocery store and you had a panic attack, you'll avoid that certain place. Some of the causes, sometimes brain abnormalities or heredity, and also major life stress, like if a death of a loved one or if something changed in your life, like moving or something. Fight or flight can also be linked to panic disorder, and but otherwise it's hard to tell really where panic disorder comes from.
There are 4 types of panic disorders. Obsessive compulsive disorder, post-traumatic disorder, anxiety, and phobias. OCD is unreasonable thoughts and fears. Those people tend to be more organized and have fear of germs. Post-traumatic disorder is feeling stressful or frightened even when there's no threats around you. Anxiety is having a feeling of nervousness or feeling uneasy, and then phobia is having a fear of a certain thing. Some statistics are 1 in 75 Americans suffer from a panic disorder, and the average age is 18 to 34. 6 million American adults suffer from a panic disorder, and 2.7% of the adult population has a panic disorder.
She's got a lot of things on her mind and has been rushing around, throwing all the items she needs into the shopping cart. While checking the price on a can of goods, she notices something strange. Her heart has suddenly begun to beat hard, so hard in fact that it is pulsating in her throat. This startles her, and then she notices how her arm begins to shake with a pins and needles sensation. This is the first time anything like this has ever happened to her. She is confused and starting to get really scared. Something must be wrong, she thinks, and begins to mentally list all the possible things it could be. Is it the start of a heart attack? Is it an allergic reaction to something she ate? Her stomach and chest muscles feel really tense and her breathing becomes faster and more shallow. She glances around at the people near her, and as she does so, she feels lightheaded and dizzy. The confusion and fear she feels is sending her into a panic. The sensations in her body intensify, and she is convinced something awful is about to happen. She feels a need to get outside and leaves her shopping cart full of goods behind as she walks slowly towards the exit. As soon as she is outside in the cool air, she feels a slight sense of relief and more in control as the physical sensations are losing momentum. Although she is calming down, she is still in shock and her body is shaking. It feels as if someone had just held a gun to her head.
Okay, that's just an example of how someone would feel during a panic.
So a lot of people actually can get panic attacks just like once in their life and then never experience another one, but that was what would happen if you were to have a panic attack.
All right, next will be one of the groups on PTSD. And one of the things too, as I told you guys to be looking for things that are similar or different. There's one statistic that keeps showing up that maybe you guys are catching wind of. Who tends to suffer more from anxiety disorders? Women. Yeah, and that's something that maybe we'll continue to see here, but that's certainly something that's, I think, relevant statistics that we're seeing through these anxiety disorders.
Our disorder was PTSD, and it's known as post-traumatic stress disorder. And it's a severe anxiety disorder that develops from a traumatic event in someone's life, such as a death in the family, an assault, or someone who just came from war.
So there's like a lot of symptoms for it, but some of them like anger, guilt, self-destruction, hallucinations, nightmares. So like someone who's like a veteran and came back from war, they might have like a nightmare or something and like wake up sweating and like heart beating fast and like screaming and stuff like that. Some statistics is about 10% of women get PTSD at some point in their life. So another thing where women suffer more than men. And that's like 2 in 10 men, like 5%. Yeah, 5%. Yeah.
Women are a lot more likely to get PTSD. Like she said before, it says has PTSD and is on medication. 20% of women have that, but only 9% of women are in that range. The causes would be. Do you want to watch the video first? Okay. The causes would be like direct exposure to a trauma. You might have had serious harm during the event. You or a family member could have been in trouble or could have been hurt. Just witnessing it or having a close call can trigger something. War zones, a lot of soldiers have PTSD, and firefighters that have had close calls. 50, you want to?
Yeah. These are some of the main things that cause PTSD. The highest is child sexual abuse, and these are all then the second highest is combat, as in veterans who came from Afghanistan, Iraq, and the lowest is sexual assault.
Alright, these are all disorders that have had PTSD related. That's from Iraq / Afghanistan in the past 10 years. This one has been from Vietnam. You can see that Vietnam had a lot of PTSD patients, whatever, and the Gulf War had about 56,000 that were reported PTSD.
These are some of the effects that it has on the person's brain. This right here is a normal person's brain, and that's someone with PTSD. A person with PTSD has an 8% reduction in their hippocampus, and the difference is seen through an MRI. And the only place in the brain that it has an effect on is just the hippocampus, and not other areas.
Post-traumatic stress disorder, or PTSD, is a type of anxiety disorder where a person experiences major emotional shock following a stressful or frightening event. While initially developed in response to soldiers' experiences of war, PTSD can affect anyone who has been directly or indirectly impacted by trauma.
Well, post-traumatic stress disorder actually is a very increasing disorder. It's one that seems to be happening more and more, and the situations we've experienced more recently with bushfires, flooding, those sorts of experiences can create a post-traumatic stress disorder in many people.
The person can find it difficult to forget about the traumatic events that might actually come back to them in images or flashbacks or dreams. They might also feel that they need to avoid the situations that remind them of the traumatic event.
PTSD can lead to long-term feelings of detachment or being spaced out, numbness and fatigue, as well as anger and frustration with life in general.
They can feel over time too that they feel a bit distanced from others and from the world, and can actually be also more inclined to be jumpy or to startle with loud sounds and things like that, find it hard to sleep, and find that they just generally feel a lot of tension in their body.
PTSD is most commonly treated with cognitive behavior therapy, which focuses on specific aspects of the trauma.
Well, post-traumatic stress disorder will be treated with psychological therapy in the same way that other anxiety disorders are, and will help people to look at the situation, to look at the things that may trigger those symptoms, and then look at a strategy for managing those symptoms to minimize them and reduce their impact.
Therapy may be combined with medication to help relieve some of the symptoms and allow the sufferer to embrace the techniques they've learned. A relatively new advance in treatment of PTSD is called eye movement desensitization and reprocessing.
And so that involves the person for short periods of time, for about 15 to 30 seconds, reliving the traumatic event, describing it again, at the same time by moving their eyes rapidly back and forth. They might be following a small dot, or they might just do that themselves. And that's argued to work in two ways. One is that there's an argument that the eye movement itself actually leads to some biological and psychological changes in the person that helps them recover from the traumatic event. The other argument is it's not the eye movement, it's actually exposing yourself to reliving that event that actually helps you deal with that event.
Any questions for the group? PTSD has been in the news a lot more recently because of war, but I thought it was good, and my first period did this as well, is showing the other ways that you get PTSD. It's not just war related. It can be from sexual abuse. It can be from childhood experiences. It can be from, and that's one of the things with women, how women, they said again, are maybe more more so diagnosed with PTSD, it has something to do with maybe sexual abuse and stuff like that as well. So it's not just war. It could also be firemen. It could also be policemen. There's a lot of people who could suffer from this. We've just seen a lot more news and footage on it, especially with us being around like Fort Bragg and stuff like that with PTSD. All right, next group will be OCD. So I'll let you guys come on up. And this should finish us up for the day with our anxiety disorders. So a lot of pretty much everything we've been talking about so far have all been categorized in the DSM-4 TR as anxiety disorders. They are more specific. Remember the DSM-5, they're going to spend a lot more time on both PTSD and I think OCD.
OCD is an obsessive compulsive disorder. It's an anxiety disorder that affects children as well as adults, and is characterized by like uncontrollable thoughts that they can't control, and also these are known as obsessions, and these lead to uncontrollable behaviors such as compulsions, and some of these behaviors may include washing hands, counting, organizing things that don't necessarily need to be organized, and treatment is necessary for alleviating its effects.
Okay, so some of the statistics were the Journal of Reproductive Medicine found that 11% of mothers had OCD symptoms during their second week in 6 months following childbirth, compared to the 2% of the rest of the population. And then this disorder affects 2 to 3% of people, and then it also affects 1 in every 50 people, and many go undiagnosed.
Some of the causes for OCD have been found to be brain abnormalities and serotonin, low levels of that, because it's a neurotransmitter that deals with regulating emotions and mood and anxiety. And so people with OCD have been found to have lower levels of serotonin as opposed to people without OCD. And then major life events can also cause OCD. And but researchers aren't 100% that does cause OCD. There's still some doubts about that. And then some celebrities that have OCD are Megan Fox, Mark Summers from that show Unwrapped with all the candy, and then Leonardo DiCaprio and David Beckham and Justin Timberlake and Cameron Diaz, and then the probably the most famous one right there is Howie Mandel. And then some of the symptoms are worrying and touching and arranging things and mental rituals, counting, just organizing everything.
Okay, we have a video, but it doesn't look like it worked, so we might just have to go to YouTube and watch it.
Six young Brits on the journey of a lifetime. They're heading deep into the North American wilderness. But this is no ordinary trek.
He was having thoughts of beating her up, of punching her in the face.
I should keep